How old is Dorian? He's 12. And he is just now starting what we call the FEI levels, which is pre-St. George. And in Allison's case, since she's a young rider, he's just starting the young rider competition part, which the tests are equivalent to pre-St. George. So he's just coming into his own and starting to learn what we call self-carriage. Okay, let's see Dorian. What we're doing with Dorian is we're trying to show you his more or less warmed up self. And then we're going to put a different saddle on him to show what he thinks about something else. The problem we've had with this horse from day one is saddles moving up his neck. This saddle does move up his neck briefly, a little, but compared to everything we have on him, nothing you put on him stays anywhere. It goes up 3, 4, and 5 inches up his neck. He's also a very opinionated horse. Good. Okay. When this horse came to us, he was extremely sore in his back. This was a year ago. He was extremely hollow in his back, about 2 inches lower. We needed a medium tree. We needed an extra gusset, and we needed a cushion under the extra gusset. So if you put that together as a package, a medium tree with an extra gusset, with an extra towel, what we ended up using for a temporary basis was a folded towel. It took about 2 to 3 months before he got to where he didn't need the towel. Then he needed a wider tree. He went from a medium to a medium wide tree. Now he's in a wide tree with a little bit fuller gusset, but not a true extra gusset. So that's a lot of changes in 1 year. This horse has had to have 2 completely different saddles. What we've done is put a tree that's now too narrow. Doesn't rock much. So this will be a good test to find if there's other reasons for saddles to go forward. There's very little real rock in the saddle, and you can actually see that it's not, in fact, lifting up behind her very much. Let's see if it is in the trot. And let's also see what his body does. And now we can see that it's lifting up and back. You can already see the lift behind. And how about Allison? Is she riding as well?
No.
No. How about his body? Let's take a look at his body, because I think what I'm already seeing is more of what we were dealing with when he first came. And he's doing it more and more. More out behind himself, less under and through his back. He's trying very hard, and realize that this horse isn't sore. He's got no soreness anywhere, so we're not aggravating an existing condition. But is he working as well or under himself? And how about the quality of the canter?
He's rigid.
He's getting tighter. He's getting hollower. The more he has time in the saddle, the more tight in his mouth he's getting. He's no longer stepping under or through. Okay. That's the edge of his shoulder blade. Okay, so yes, it has come forward. And interestingly enough, you see the same thing standing still we see in the other saddle, that the saddle appears to be kind of low. He's standing kind of with the back hollow, but he can't come up in this. Okay? And I checked before she went out. It was a full 2 fingers behind the shoulder blade. So we know where it started. Good. Thank you. What I want to show, this is one of the sorer horses, and he's got quite a saddle problem. We got to see yesterday his sweat pattern that indicated a lot of soreness. And with a horse like this who has a sweat pattern like that, we know that the saddle needs some readjustment and flocking, but what we want to show or see is where is he sore, and the sweat pattern was an area right in through here. That was a dry area, which means in my mind there's a chance that, it's not guaranteed, but a chance that the flocking is causing some pressure in this area. Now, as far as sore, watch every time I'm pressing in, he moves his whole shoulder and he drops down. I mean, that's very, very, very sore. He's sore here, here. I mean, all the way through his whole body, almost everywhere I touch him, he's sore. And I'm not putting much pressure. Now, we've seen a lot of horses where I can do the same amount of pressure and get absolutely no reaction. Some pressure like this, and I get just a little twinge. When you see a horse like this, everywhere I touch him, we're getting reactions. Both sides, and this is the kind of horse, when you see this something, we gotta help the horse. That's the key here. He must have some major changes done. I don't know that the saddle is the wrong saddle for him. I think it might be an okay saddle. We just need to change the flocking. Okay. What we've got under here is about 2 fingers with a fairly soft panel. I'd like to see a little bit more. It's a fairly soft panel, so we should be able to get a little bit more. She rides it with an extra thicker pad. Remember what we saw is this lack of coverage. The back doesn't match the shape of this horse. So what we have is the tree's a very good possibility, but this is not. It is a perfect example of severe rocking. Do you remember yesterday I said, where's a horse that has a very severe rocker panel going to be sore? The answer was everywhere. Because what happens is the saddle won't stay. It's going to work up to here, no matter what the situation is, everywhere. Because here, the saddle's going to tip down a little tiny bit. Speaking of body language, that's not a fly. Okay? When you get here, then as the saddle moves up, it's going to be hurting in the middle. Every time she sits, it's going to hurt here. And when she rises, it's going to hurt here. And if the saddle, once it stabilizes in place too far forward, now you've got here. And he's very sore here. So when you look at all the things, the horse has a very good attitude. He's a wonderful brain. He's a wonderful horse. And really, once he's not sore, I think he's going to be an incredibly willing horse. Looking at the saddle, it's a wolf-lock saddle. I think we can get the tree about right, because the tree itself isn't bad. It just needs a little more up front. But it needs a lot of the bulk right in here, because it's too round right here and too firm right in the middle for this horse. Does that make sense? Can you see? Does that make sense? Because it's a difficult thing. So if we can get this one reflocked, I think we'll have a major, major improvement here. I think it would be fun to do the saddle tech gauge on this horse. Let's get that out. We're back to finding the shoulder blade, a little bit behind that point. Okay, now we're going to put it on the saddle and see what we see. Let's turn it upside down this time. Yeah, just like that. That looks good. Okay, what we're seeing is that the tree, the front part is quite good. The middle part is adequate, not a lot of coverage, but what happens is there's very little coverage here. I think the light can pick it up, that I can get my fingers all the way under here, all the way under here. Remember where the sweat pattern was? Right down the middle. But look here. Remember we said it's a rocker? So needless to say, if I close in, hold that while I press against you. If I close it in here, the angle isn't too terrible, but I have nothing back here, which is what we saw. This is the ridge point, what I call the rocker point. Remember when I pointed out that this is the part that must be changed? You can see that this is what we call the pivot point, right? Under here, if I tip it down here, this is what I get. If I tip it down here, this is what I get. So the analysis is that the tree is adequate, which is what we came up with. The fact that the whole thing is a rocker panel, what needs to be taken out and softened is what I'm calling my pivot point, which is right here, which is what we'd already suspected. So this tells exactly what we felt and saw, but in clear terms. This is Lisa's horse, Adrian, and she's willing to show us, knowing her saddle isn't right, 2 or 3 minutes, because she had already determined not to use the saddle until we got it fixed. And I conned her, talked her, bribed her, and begged her into showing us at least a little bit of what she's had to deal with the saddle, knowing there was something wrong, but not being able to put her finger on it. I see an incredibly willing horse. But still not willing, as she's already pointed out, to come through his back and stretch the way we know he could or should. And that's what we're going to be working on, is to try to get. Also, remember we pointed out rocker panel? This is a perfect example. It's what in back? It's following the rider up in the back. And that's what the rider can't feel, but what a person on the ground can see. Does that make sense? Pretty clear. Okay, that's all we need. I don't want to make him any. That's it.
This was the saddle that was being used on the Gray Thoroughbred, and what I've done so far is I've pulled this flocking out of this part of the saddle, which was the part that was rocking on the horse. The goal is to pull it out to get this area flatter, because just by pounding it alone, it is not going to flatten. It's hard and bald and knotted in there, and no amount of pounding is going to flatten it and soften it down to what we need. So by removing it, I'm actually physically flattening this out, and as I'm going along, I'm making sure that there are no lumps, there are no divots, that it's even, and the depth compression on either side is the same, because then you don't want to get in other problems of it becoming uneven, making the horse sore again because she's sitting on one side and not the other.
Before, remember, if it was connecting here, it didn't connect here. Now she's taken out this high spot. What we call the pivot point is now gone, and we've got contact all the way through all 4 of them. So we should have a very much better feel now for the horse. Excellent.
Do you want me to put some in the front?
Just a tiny bit in the front, because remember what we were talking about in the front, it was down to about 2 fingers. So we would like to see just about 2.5 to 3 fingers in front.
And what I'm doing is I made a channel before with the flocking iron, and now I'm feeding the wool down into that channel that I created. But I don't want to pack it in there too hard, because if you do pack it in there too hard, you'll be creating lumps and a spot that you can't pound down with your masher. So if you would be able to feel this from here to here, I put that little tuft of wool in, right in that area. You can kind of see, if I run my hand like that, where that piece of wool went. So now what I'm going to do is put a little bit up in here and then work down this way. And as I'm going along, I'm feeling where I'm placing it, so I'm just not stuffing it in there and it's not going where I don't want it to go. So now you can see where I first dropped my hand off that first time, it's not dropping off anymore. That area right in there is where I put the new piece of wool. So now it's consistent in that line. So now this is where I put my pieces of wool. Right in here you can see that that drop off is now gone. So now as I'm going along, I use my masher. And you can't even tell. It's all blended in now.
Okay, after Kate has worked on the saddle, it's still not done to our preferred way. It was what I would call a very quick fix. It's not a complete job, which will have to be done over a much bigger period of time. We do anticipate the horse changing, so we're not sure we want to do a whole lot other than make him comfortable for now, and let's give it a few weeks or a month or two, and let's see how much more changes will occur, because I have a feeling that this horse is going to undergo a lot of changes once he's comfortable. So this is a greatly modified saddle, and let's see if we can see a whole lot of difference. There's still a little bit of rock to it. This is a very flat-backed horse. It's hard to understand that some thoroughbreds are as flat as he is, but he's a very flat-backed horse. So we still have a little tiny bit of rock in it, although it's definitely better. Does he feel better to you, Lisa? Good. This is Anne, and Anne's horse is 15 years old, and right now what we're trying to show is we put the wrong saddle on. This saddle is not a lot too high, but a little too high, but the worst part is it's very, very tight in his shoulders, extremely tight, and it's a little too far forward. Shorten up your reins and try to get him to be working a little bit better. Is he easier or harder to kind of work right? Harder, like he doesn't want to put his neck down at all. Okay, she says he's harder and he doesn't seem to want to put his head down. I don't think I would either if I were being pinched in my shoulders. Okay. Okay.
Really short, like much shorter than normal.
Shorter strides? Okay. All right, we'll see what he looks like with another saddle. Okay, saddle fit panel. Too wide. Too wide. No clearance on the horse. Makes it pommel low. Pretty good in the spot. It could be slightly further back. If it were further back, it would sit even lower in front. Would we want this saddle on this horse for any reason at any time? Could it be made to fit with a high-density foam pad? We could get by with it. Would it make it ideal? No. Okay. I don't want to go very far, very long, because we know he's hurting. So let's see what we see. Let's also, while we're doing it, see how she as a rider has changed. It's tipping her body forward, it's making her out of balance, and it's definitely not very happy on the horse. That's enough. Now, anybody have any opinions on this? Do we see better? Everybody's getting a good head nod, yes. I agree. He's getting steadier in his stride, and he's starting to get a little longer in his stride. So I would say yes, when this horse is happy, he has a lot of potential to do a fair amount of good, nice work. When he's unhappy, he's definitely hard to ride, hard to deal with. That's getting better and better. The fact that here Ann doesn't even have to work to keep his head down, he just kind of relaxes it on down, which is before he didn't. Whenever he put his head up, she would have to say, no, no, let's try to stretch down. His strides are getting longer. He's no longer moving like a little, what we would call a sewing machine, and he's extremely even. Her riding position, what do you see different? Is she sitting up more? Good. I think that's a pretty clear picture. Good. Thank you. Okay. With this saddle, what we have is just about 3 tight fingers. With a rider in it, it comes to 2.5. The balance is right. There's no rocking. And to check for rock, you do have to have a loose girth. There's virtually no rocking. The contact is smooth throughout the whole thing. Just as a glance, I'm seeing that there's a little bit of coming up behind her. So that's something to maybe look at and see. It's also somewhat tight through here. Okay, put your fingers down in here and feel. Okay, the clearance is good. We got good clearance. It's sitting a little tiny bit down and back. I wonder if we move it back it would change anything, but let's see him work about 2 minutes and check, or maybe 3 or 4 laps around. And what I want to observe, just walk a little and then trot a circle down there.
Is that chocolate? Oh, it's raspberry or cherry or strawberry or something along those lines.
He's a little tense and a little rushing. And the saddle is trying to come up behind her just a tiny bit. Those are the things that I'm seeing as moving fit. Okay, let's stop, pull the saddle back, and see if we get an improvement. The tree is fractionally too narrow, but when she's in the saddle, it's sitting about 3 fingers, so I'd say it's an acceptable. I think I moved it back probably about 1.5 inches. Then the question is 2 things. 1, is it going to stay? And 2, does it make any sense or better for him? He says, well, I think we're off to the races. I might be wrong, but I think it's already back up there again.
Yeah. What you got on?
Yep.
Yeah, now it's rocking.
So we'll look at it, and this is a perfect example of a saddle not staying in place. Yep. Yep. And it's right back up there again. We're now, it's moved forward about 3 inches. Got it? Okay. That's what we need to do, is see if we can find something just to show if he's going to change, if he gets something that doesn't climb up his neck. And we'll look at this and see if there's any, see if there's any wool changing that could be done. Okay? Good. All right, we'll look at this one in a little bit. We had to go to a wider tree with a flatter panel. Come up, one step. Attaboy. And what we've got, in order to check to see the rock, I'm going to loosen the girth again. He probably wonders what I'm doing and why. But there's virtually no rock. The front feels better in here. So we're going to see what he thinks about it. What we want to know is it going to move forward? Well, I see one thing already I like. He's not rushing. Say it again. Is that nice? Is that totally different? Totally different.
Position is much better. Jan, what's interesting is her position has changed too in that saddle.
Good. As you can see, I think we've got one of these kind of fun things to get. The horse is no longer rushing. His attitude, his frame, his body language is starting to appear better. Her position is already in a much better alignment until I said position and she straightened up and got a little stiffer. Did you notice that? Yes. Go back to relax. You don't need to worry about your position. It's fine. Yeah, he's even starting to offer stretch.
Yeah.
So this is the difference between, in this case, the saddle wasn't bad. Again, a little tight in the tree, but not enough for you to go, oh my God, the horse isn't appreciably sore, and yet enough irritated for him not to be comfortable. And look at the difference in the horse. Totally different horse. To be able to see this kind of transformation gives you, I think, an idea about how, once again, it is important that all of the factors in the saddle, you can't just have the tree size be right. You can't just have the placement right, because it might not stay put. You can't just have one out of the four basics, or actually if you consider the gullets, which I happen to consider a basic, you can't just have one right. You have to have all. Without any one of these five basics, you're probably going to have some problem somewhere. There's exceptions to every single thing we've learned, and you're going to find horses somewhere along the line that'll break a rule, and you might have to do something different. Dorian is one of those exceptions, because to be honest, I struggled and struggled trying to know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I've never had a horse that nothing I did seemed to work. And I ended up having to do what was really wrong in order to be right. So sometimes you follow all the rules and it still doesn't work. And that's when you have to use common sense and realize that we don't know anything. To be honest, we're just learning. The bottom line is, what is the horse like? Again, when Dorian started going like that, and when this horse goes like this, you know, okay, I'm on the right track. You may have to change it. You may have to put something on and then switch it and change it again. You may think you have the solution, and a month later, it's all wrong again. So this is not, it's not something that has a formula. And for all the knowledge that I have, I feel like I'm just starting to learn. I feel like I have just experienced the tip of the iceberg. I have a lot more to learn. What's important to realize is that every horse I work with teaches me something, and I'm sure you'll find the same.
AJ is a Tennessee walker, and he's 11 years old, and I brought him here today because he has tender spots along his back. He's usually very willing to gait. He'll do it all day long. Primarily, the soreness has kept him from performing to the best of his ability.
Okay, looking at him, he's got a fairly high wither, and you can see that he needs more muscle in the longissimus dorsi. It means that whatever reason he's not using his back the way he should. That's what Jerry indicated. He is, I believe, going to be some soreness in through his body. In here, you're going to find some soreness. When right in here, you want to watch that this area in here kind of tightens. See him twitch? And I'm applying not much more than just a massage, that kind of feeling. And if he's not sore, you wouldn't get a response. So every time can you see this? Every time I'm coming into this part, which is the back of the saddle, which is indicating the saddle is probably sitting cantle low. And the only problem I'm really coming up with a lot is the fact that this muscle is definitely not working. And whenever we come into this area right in here, he's quite sore. Another indication is that he doesn't want to do what we call a belly lift. He's very reluctant to do it. And this, as you can actually feel, there's an area right in here that's almost atrophied. And that's the response we're getting the most, right in there. So what we will be attempting to do is to get a saddle that won't put any more pressure in this area, okay? When you do have a horse like this that is clearly sore, it's not a bad idea to plan on giving him a week or two off, because it's kind of hard, even once you get something that fits him. It's like your own body. If you're sore, you want to stretch it out, you want to treat it nicely, but give it a chance to heal. To not work the horse, or just to maybe maybe lunge the horse, or do something in some other quiet, mild exercise without a rider is probably the better thing to do for him for a little while. Okay, with what we've added now is a wedge pad. It's fairly thin in front. It compresses down to about 1/4 inch in front, and the compressed amount up front, up in the back, is about a good 1/2 inch or maybe 5/8 of an inch. And what that's done, as you can see, balance-wise, it's really brought the back of the saddle up substantially. Now, there is a problem, and you do have to be careful. In many situations, if you bring the back up, you have to be careful that you're not bringing the front down and causing an extra pressure in the front. So when you do, first thing you want to do is to check to see if there's extra pressure right here. Because very typically, bringing the front up lowers, bringing the back up lowers the front. Okay? All right, let's see what you think of that. Now, hopefully we've taken most of the direct pressure off of the back. And from a distance, the saddle appears, which is another check, appears to be in better balance. And one of the things when we talk about checking saddle fit in motion is to look at the front and back balance. Now, I see already a much more willingness to go. Do you see what I see? 1, 2, 3, 4. He's very clear now, and he's gaiting. He's relaxing. He's no longer trying to get out of it by cantering, and he's no longer throwing his head anywhere near as much. Okay, this is Shadrach. He's a 20-year-old quarter horse, big quarter horse, and he certainly doesn't look 20. Christina just bought a brand new saddle, and what needs now is final, what we call tune-up flocking. Right now she has what we call a bumper pad behind. We have a folded towel placed in there to help the balance on the horse so that it's more comfortable for her. The horse is a little bit sore, probably from in the past having a saddle that did hurt him. So let's see how he goes. There's some nice pieces. He's already warming up where he wants to stretch a little bit and get a little more comfortable in his way of going. Okay. That gives us a pretty good idea.
This is an 8-year-old Morgan, weed driver and pleasure rider.
Good. Emmy, as you can tell, is a Morgan, and her back is fairly typical of Morgans. We have Morgans in many different kind of back shapes. Some tend to be what we call croup high, but many or most of them tend to be wide. Therefore, most Morgans and many Arabs, so you find breed characteristics, and this is a very good example, they need a wide tree. This happens to be, I think anyone looking can see, this is a wide tree. If we were to put the gauge on it, we would see that the number of degrees here to here is quite wide. But this is the kind of saddle she needs. Okay, what we have when we're here, we have about 2.5 fingers. We have not a firm gusset, but the problem with this is the horse, when she's mounted, since she doesn't do, she drives, she does trail riding, she doesn't change a lot on her back. She pretty much stays the same. Therefore, we want the balance pretty much as you see it. So what you end up with her is got a nice contact through here. What I probably would like is a hair more up in front. I'd like to add perhaps a little bit of flocking because she's a little bit thinner than she was when we fitted her before. And maybe a little bit softer right in this one area. Outside of that, let's see what her back shows. If I'm right, I should get a little bit of a reaction right in there. And I'm getting a tiny, tiny squiggle of kind of just a little twitch. And I'm getting the tiniest little twitch here. I did anyway. Tiny bit right there. And that's what I see the saddle. Needs a tiny bit softening here and a little bit more in front. That's the kind of support this horse needs and this saddle needs. And this is probably 6 months now. So she's ready for a little minor adjustment. 6 months to a year, most saddles should be reanalyzed and at least checked, particularly if you've changed something. If your horse has gained weight, lost weight, taken on a new training program. So you need to do a relatively frequent check if you've made some changes. Good, thank you. You know what would be fun is to see a narrow tree on this horse. What do you think? Yes? Like it? No. I've got lots of room. Lots of clearance. Okay, that's a no-go. Remember, we're after this point pocket to go behind the shoulder blade here. There's the point pocket, so we're in the right place. Flexibility in the flaps, but the saddle is sitting cantle low because the saddle is sitting pommel high. So the balance that the tree is too narrow, therefore the back is too low. So what this horse has to have, whether it be an all-purpose saddle, a jumping saddle, is a wide tree. And a pretty standard through the back. She doesn't need anything special there, just a wide tree. Okay, we've got one more horse, and I think you'll find her interesting. She's an Andalusian Clydesdale cross, and probably, except for Dorian, thank you, Allison, one of the more difficult horses that we've had to fit. Part of the reason is that Tom's a big man, and he rides his horse, and he wanted a Western saddle. Pam rides his horse, and she wanted an English saddle. Fortunately, Emmy's saddle will fit this horse. But we were trying to find a Western saddle that didn't hurt this horse. And it was a very interesting situation. Every saddle we put on her, be it up on her shoulder or slid it back, every saddle we tested, Australian saddles, everything, she would take 2 steps and stop dead in her tracks and grow roots. She would not move 1 single inch further. She just grew roots. She's extremely opinionated. Tom, let's have Tom, because I want Tom in relationship with her, because this is the rider we were fitting. Now, Pam rides her as well. How old is Megan now? 5. This is Tom. She's 6. Okay, and she's learning to drive, and she's doing pretty good. She's a trail horse and just an all-around pleasure horse. We're going to let him put this sucker up here this time. Now, she loved it. This is a case of ask the horse. Falls right in place on her. She likes the saddle. There's plenty of clearance, one pad under here. It's not I'd like a little less pressure here, but she handles this pressure, particularly when we get the thicker pad under. The balance is right. All we can say is this horse chose this saddle. And the bottom line, guys, that's what it is. The horse should help you choose your saddle. It's the horse's saddle as well as yours. When you palpate the horse now, nothing anywhere. So we must be doing something right. Nothing on the shoulder points, nothing behind the shoulder, nothing here, nothing down here, and nothing on the spine. So whatever we're doing, she likes it.
This particular one is a close contact saddle, and it's lumpy up in the front here in these areas. It's hard and round. It falls off. There's a divot here. As you move back, this side's flatter than this side, and this is obvious when you sight down the gullet. There's a divot back here. There's another one here. Round lump here. It's flat through here, and really large lump back here. I would hazard a guess that the horse is probably really sore on this side. Falls off here and is flat all the way back. Also sighting down the gullet, which is really important when you're checking for panels, consistency from side to side. You're looking for symmetrical evenness. I also noticed that this panel bulges out into the gullet more than this one does, which isn't surprising because since this is the higher side, this is the flatter side, it's going to bulge out into the gullet. In a case like this, I would probably remove the panel, try to take out this lump and the lumps in the front, try to save what I can of the original layer if flocking had been added to this, and put it back on and try to get it as flat and even throughout as I possibly could. Also sighting down the gullet, which is really important when you're checking for panels, consistency from side to side. You're looking for symmetrical evenness. I also noticed that this panel bulges out into the gullet more than this one does, which isn't surprising because since this is the higher side, this is the flatter side, it's going to bulge out into the gullet. In a case like this, I would probably remove the panel, try to take out this lump and the lumps in the front, try to save what I can of the original layer if flocking had been added to this, and put it back on and try to get it as flat and even throughout as I possibly could.
The last thing to understand and to analyze, and we're going to try to show, is anytime you get a saddle new, used, or anywhere, you've got 3 or 4 different ways to analyze and check for evenness. You feel it. She showed you that. It's important to feel it. The best way to feel it is to turn it upside down and sight down it. Usually I put it on my toes and bend over, and I literally feel down the entire thing, all the way down, feel how much give there is, which is what she was describing. After you've done your feeling of it, that's not the end, then sight it, and you want to sight from the top, from this part, and you want to keep sighting all the way through so that you can compare this side to this side to this side, all the way through as you go. If you're looking down over the top, you'll be able to pick up the asymmetry from side to side. And unfortunately, there are some saddles that come from the manufacturer crooked. Sometimes the trees are crooked. Sometimes they've been webbed crooked. You have to be aware that that's a possibility. Fortunately, it's not that often, but it does happen. So you need to have some at least knowledge. The first thing you do if you're getting a new saddle is to take a good look at it and kind of, I'm not looking for minuscule nuances, I'm looking for something that's crooked. What you do have to be careful of is sometimes nameplates are crooked and it'll make the saddle appear to be crooked. Sometimes the seaming in here might be crooked, but the saddle is not. So you want to look at not just aesthetically, you want to look for the real foundation of it. So there's more to a crooked saddle than just saying, oh, it looks crooked. It might sit crooked on the horse, but look straight. Check the flocking. It may be the tree. So the bottom line is try to understand what's crooked and why. The pelvic structure of every person that rides, every person, is different. The width of the pelvic structure, the tip and angle of the pelvic structure, the curvature of the cradle, the ischial tuberosity cradle are all different. In men, the hip socket joint is a different structure than in women. It makes it easier for most men, if it fits them anatomically, for their legs to fall straight down from their hips. Our women's bone structure is different. There are some major anatomical differences between men and women. In general, and it's again, I'm using a general rule of thumb, the structure of a bone, of the pelvic structure of women is wider, the cradle is further apart, and it's of a more open angle. Men closer together, in general. The pubic arch is different. The structure, the seat bone in the pubic arch is literally narrower and more angled like a V, upside down V in men, more U-shaped, more open-shaped like this in women. You're going to find exceptions. I've seen women who seem to love a high, narrow saddle because the pubic arch is obviously higher. You'll find men who prefer their bone structure is wider. They prefer a wider. We get into what is called the twist. The term twist came from the fact that originally when trees, visualize the trees, the front of the saddle is made this way, and it has to get to this angle by the time it gets on the horse. The wood literally has to go through from this angle and rotate and twist to flat. The wood has to twist. That's the twist. If you need a narrow twist, you could almost sit on a fence rail and it doesn't bother you. A narrow, very narrow seams, narrow through here, doesn't bother you. Other people, you sit on something like that and it's extremely painful. It doesn't match. You will protect yourself. You'll start riding rotated down. You'll pull yourself away from the saddle in the front. So a lot of anatomical differences can cause a lot of rider problems. We've seen people with constantly rounded shoulders. I feel very strongly that the balance and fit of the saddle on the horse can contribute to that, cantle low. But also, if the saddle's not anatomically designed for you, then you're going to do the same thing. If someone gave me their height and their weight, could I say absolutely what kind of saddle? Not a chance. I could guess, and I'd be more than 50% right, but not a lot more than 50%. I can't look at any one of you and say, you're going to like X. Only you know that. As your horse is the one who can say what feels right to him, and he acts that way, only you know. And when you get in the saddle, if it's right for you. No one else can tell you what saddle is right for you. But what will happen is if the saddle's right for you, your legs fall into place, it has no pain or pressure points anywhere in your body. You can sit straight up, as you should, without arching your back, without tucking your body and rolling it under. A lot of the rider problems where you're sitting what we call a chair seat, a lot of that, balance of saddle on a horse, also anatomical difference in the saddles. So it can also be caused by the saddles being the wrong type for you. So there's many different reasons. Okay, having said that, I think it would be fun to have different people sit in different saddles and say what they like or don't like.
I like it that's a little wide.
I like it, but it's a little wide. Question, wide where? Top? Under here. Okay. It's not always something that's wide, but identify wide where. So what it's doing is opening her hip joints further than she likes it. It could be because she's not a dressage rider. It could be because her hips don't like to go that wide, or it could be because she hasn't opened up in this ligament yet. If that's the case, only time would tell. And I need some narrow ones. And yeah. Okay. This one is much better. Where?
Right there.
Okay, this one fits her body. Okay, the next thing to look at, if you're looking at her, is she sitting straight comfortably, or is she leaning back and collapsing? Is she wiggling in the saddle? Is she putting her hand on the front and pushing it away from the front? There's a lot of things to look at, and you need to tune in when you get on the saddle on a fitting horse as to, okay, I feel this, I feel pressure. Do you feel pressure anywhere? Okay, good. Legs seem to fall in place without you. This was bothering you before, this doesn't bother you. Good, okay, so it looks like we have a pretty good possibility. Every saddle maker has their own idea what is the best design, and usually what they're trying to do, please the general population, obviously, because that's what they're trying to sell the most saddles. That doesn't mean you'll fall into every saddle maker's ideal. There's no right saddle in anatomical shape or wrong saddle. It's does the particular saddle you're sitting in fit your particular body. What's this one like?
No, this is too narrow. I like
It's
the other one.
where?
In here.
Okay, it bothers you?
It just isn't, it's harder.
It's harder. Harder means pressure points. Harder means pain in time. Sometimes you won't feel the pain right away. Sometimes it takes time for pressure to develop into pain. Okay, so this saddle doesn't support her bone structure totally in the right way. This one happens to be a narrower twist. The other one was a little bit wider twist. The first one she sat in was a little too wide. The key to trying to understand anatomical fit is you have to understand a number of different things. I'm doing kind of a rude thing to her. This saddle doesn't fit this horse.
No, it's pommel low.
Good. She picked that up right away. Excellent. So when you're trying a saddle in the store and you've made the determination that you need a wide tree and the plastic fitting horse that you're sitting on isn't wide, or vice versa, if you're looking for a narrow one, you have to pad it, change it, and make it almost like if it were on the horse. So that means in order for this saddle to fit this horse, we'd have to do one of two things. Put more pads to make it feel, or bring it forward a little, at least it'll change the balance. So come off. She says it's sitting pommel low, which it was. Now on this horse, because it's falling down in front, it's better. So you can't just automatically judge a saddle by sitting on it. You'll sit on it and you go, ugh. But again, like in saddle fit, you have basics. The basics are, I want about one hand's width behind. She has that, about. Seat size is definitely dictated on your body size, your weight, where you carry your weight. Some people carry their weight more in their seat. Some people carry their weight more in their upper body. So it totally depends on their body type, not necessarily their weight and their height. Where do they carry what they have? Next is their preference. They might like the support of a little bit smaller saddle. They might not. They might like a more open saddle. They might like to be able to move around more. I know, I'd say it's like 50-50. Some people like more space. Some people like less. So it's really totally dependent on the individual. So the bottom rule of thumb is find a basic type of saddle that's going to fit your horse, and then you have to go through the different ones until you find something that you sit in for a couple of minutes before, otherwise you're going to start feeling pressure points. Sometimes you'll know it right away if it's very bad, like that. But if it's kind of maybe, then you go back and forth between a couple. Narrow down the range so that it's much easier for you and the horse and the store to have to go through this process. Finding a saddle is not easy. The wider the tree size, the wider the twist will be, because you have this going out to this, so you're going to feel this much width In a narrower tree, you're starting off in the front here, and it goes to this and back. So in a wider tree, it's going to start here, so it's wider. It's wider everywhere. So if you've got a super wide horse and you come in and you say, I don't like wide saddles, I want a narrow saddle, and you sit in all the wide ones and you think, I hate them all, I'm afraid you've got the wrong horse. There are some limitations. Now, there are some things saddlers can do. If it's a wide, you can build up the front. You can build up the top a little, which they do. They tighten up the webs. Once they tighten up the webs on top, it'll give you the illusion of being slightly narrower twist. It'll help. So some saddles feel a little narrower in a wide tree. So if you absolutely cannot stand the feel of a wide saddle, but you have a wide horse, you might keep looking until you find a saddle that feels a little bit narrower because it's shaped slightly differently. So there are no rules. It's all, every saddler has a different seat design, tree design. Some saddles have a very sweep to their seat. Some have down and flat and up. Some have higher cantles. Some have higher in the front. The pommel is higher, even though the tree may be lower. I mean, it may be a wide tree, the pommel still could be higher. So the design of the saddle has to fit your anatomy. Flap length. What is ideal? Ideal is just about the widest part of your calf. In her case, her widest part of her calf is right here. Ideally, the flap should be somewhere within an inch or two of that point. In this case, guess what? It is. So this flap length is very nice for her on this horse. What if she were 5'1"? What happens if on a 5'1" person the flap came down to here? Would she have any leg on the horse? Wouldn't work. So flap length within a range of accuracy is important.
Okay, this feels narrow. It feels like I'm sitting on a fence.
Great. I love this because it just simply means that there are no rules. It's not always the narrow, it's that it just doesn't fit right. How does that feel?
Yeah, this feels a lot better.
Okay.
This is definitely wider.
Okay. So he's already saying I like a wider, this is a wider saddle. Is it the right size yet? Nope. Good. All right, we're going to look for a bigger size now.
Okay. Yeah, see, that feels a lot better.
Okay. Size is right. Do you feel any pressure points anywhere?
No.
Good. So we seemed, how about flap? About right.
I also tend to like the feeling that I've got room to move around.
Okay. How do the blocks bother you? Is it too much in front?
Oh, no, this feels good. I hate when I feel trapped in, even in a dressage saddle.
Okay. So again, everybody has their preferences, and you've got to hear what they're saying and try to find something that's going to fit. I do hope you have a better idea of saddle fit now. There's so much more we need to learn and understand since we've really covered just the tip of the iceberg. Keep in mind your instincts and the horse's reactions are the real judges. Good luck. I hope you find the perfect saddle.